Right. Good morning, everyone. That's a very brilliant question, and the reason is that something that we are faced with every single day of our life as compliance persons. It's simply a case of security against speed, right? I say security against speed in the sense that on the one hand, you have an onboarding process which is very critical to customer experience. In fact, there are statistics to show that where users have bad customer experience, they're going to leave you. 80% of them, they're going to leave you and go to a competitor. And of course, you know that for the management, that's not good for them, considering the fact that they spend thousands of dollars or naira or pounds, as the case may be, for customer acquisition. So it's very painful when you have people leave because of bad onboarding experience. Understand there is need to secure your through thorough verification, good user onboarding experience, and security. And for me, what I've seen work in the past, solutions we've used in the past, I've seen work in the past is for new banks, for fintechs, is really very, very important that we are incorporating advanced technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, incorporating into our whole KYC process. The reason for that is that these tools actually do a lot of things at the same time. They do data extraction, risk assessment, monitoring, real-time compliance check. So if you're investing in this tool, not only are you onboarding people, but it's also doing the checks it's supposed to do as at when due. You have the liveness check or dictation check that would immediately check that, the individual that's submitting this identity is actually who they say they are. You have the computer vision algorithms, that analyzes images, analyzes government IDs. You have tools that will even check the logos, the security features of an ID card, to ensure that they're actually the real identity documents, ID cards, So for me, it's really very important that we leverage on this. We call ourselves fintechs. We call ourselves digital banks. So it's really very important that you're incorporating this technology. It's very important that you're incorporating this technology, when it comes to onboarding, because not only does it ensure efficiency, fast onboarding experience, but it also gives you that security you're looking for. That's one approach. Another thing I also advise, I've seen work in the past is adopting a risk-based approach when it comes to onboarding, right? It's very important that we understand that there are different levels to risk, different level to risk and different threats that customers pose to us. It's not a one-cap-fits-all. And when we identify that, we'll be able to tailor our onboarding or verification process to suit our customer risk profiles. For example, if you have users that are high-risk users, say, for example, they're politically exposed persons, or the business entity, the kind of businesses they're engaged in, they're very high-risk level businesses, you tailor your KYC process, you do an enhanced check, security, due diligence check to you. There's no need going through all the end-to-end process. You can fast track the process. That way, it gives that. It also, another thing is really very important for the business to understand what they are doing. If they see you adopt a risk-based approach, I doubt if there's any executive that will tell you to onboard a sanction or to onboard a politically exposed person without doing your checks.
Yeah.
You understand? But it's very important for us as compliance analysts to demonstrate. And then the last thing I will say quickly before my time goes is leveraging on data analytics. We have third-party data providers that are out there. Leverage your relationship with them, integrate with them, because when you have to onboard users, there are certain global lists. You have the OFAC list, the HM Treasury list. You need to check. You can't be checking them one after the other. That really defeats the purpose of quick onboarding. Leverage and partner with these data providers. Where you can do, as they're onboarding this process, you can actually check this in individuals against those global, there is more checks that needs to be done. So for me, it's really important that we leverage some of these solutions to reduce that tension where you're onboarding persons in real time without really wasting so much time. And at the same time, like I said, securing your platform. Because at the end of the day, we need to understand that onboarding is the foundation to all the things we are doing. Get it wrong at onboarding, we've gotten everything wrong. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosemond, for that. You know, the transactics is there, but you know, before we come back to the issue of transaction monitoring, I want to go to Benga and said, okay, Benga, based on your experience, is it so easy to implement all suggestions Osman just gave? What are the usual pitfalls you usually identify?
What you will do is pull out the report, your weekly, your monthly, download it into a floppy disk, send it to the NFIU. NFIU, God knows how many of those, right? I mean, thankfully now we have the benefit of, you know, all sorts of tools available, right? So here you are, compliance officer, you just got a budget approved for you to acquire a tool. Fantastic, makes your life easy, right? Well, guess what? It may actually be the beginning of your problems. But because if you do not get it right, then you know you're beset with all sorts of problems, right? I mean, some of the typical challenges you will see is firstly, have you even bought the right tool in the first place? I mean, given the nature of the business you do, the complexity of the business, the type of product your service, the amount of touch points you have, the amount of job done proper school into your business, right? So assuming you even got the right tool, then you begin to have things that can pop up can include, you know, you have a high volume of false positives that are coming through to the compliance team. What do you do as a small fintech? You're new, you're agile, you have a 1 or 2 man team, maybe for starts. How do you begin to, you know, investigate all these alerts? You know, adopt a risk-based approach, like Rosemond said earlier. You're regularly fine-tuning, reviewing your alerts, and ensuring that it's matches the kind of business you do. Otherwise, what you find is just bombarded with all sorts of false positives, and you're running around, spending a lot of energy on things that don't really add value, right? Second point that sometimes you may be to deal with are things around, you know, data quality and integration. So you buy the tool, you know, the data sources you're getting data from for the tool. If you do not get it right from the start, you will face problems. If you do not integrate properly, you will face problems as well. A lot of the time you find a company will buy a tool, integration may take 6 months, 1 year, you're still at it. So it is important you, one, pick the right tool. 2, you pick the right partner that even has the experience to integrate properly for you across your multiple channels. Thankfully, there's lots of, you know, options available now. So it's really for you to look at your business and look for the right tool and the right team that can give you the support you need. Another point I'd like to raise is around the evolving regulatory requirements that you see. The regulator, you know, of course, issues regulations periodically. Yemi touched on into horizon scanning, critical for your role as a compliance officer. As you scan the horizon, you see what's required of you from a transaction monitoring standpoint. You need to tweak what you're doing. You need to amend your alerts. You need to take care of those new developments always. And that comes down to really continuous improvement of your process and your transaction monitoring. The last point I'd like to do is around scalability as well. You need to ensure that the tool you're buying is scalable, is flexible, right? As fintechs, we have the ambition to launch, to be innovative and so on. But if you end up buying the wrong tool that is not scalable or flexible enough to match your ambitions, then you will have a problem as well. So those are some of the big things you need to think about in dealing with, you know, the challenges.
Yeah, thanks, Benga. So, you know, you alluded to, you know, getting all this, the essence of all this transaction monitoring is to manage the risk associated with the business. And you also mentioned sending some of this data, to NFIU. That is the expectation according to regulation. So I will move to Ibrahim, who I think incidentally has worked in the past in NFIU, to give us insights. I know gaps in AML compliance has been linked to terrorist financing, to organized crime. Some also says it causes economic instability, reputational damage, and the big elephant in the room, corruption, right? So from your view and based on your experience in NFIU, why do you think, what do you think the gaps in AML compliance, how does it pose a threat to national security?
In wherever you are in the world right now. So very topical issues, very topical questions. Thankfully, I've had the privilege of working for both sides of the divide. I have been a pioneer. I was a pioneer staff of the NFIU, and I did a stint in banking where I met Joachim, Standard Chartered, and also now decided to foray, abroad where I worked outside the country. But very recently, I had to return to the NFIU where I was the head of compliance. Very recently. And all the issues that Yemi, my big sis, very good friend of mine, has touched on, and even just last speaker as well, also talked about that, very interestingly, is all what we're talking about today. We cannot surmount these challenges that Joachim's asking about without looking at this horizon scanning that Yemi first talked about. It's a challenge, actually, because national security and the issues that have come out of it are actually symptomatic to the challenges and the gaps that we have. So being in the NFIU and having to service and support multiple law enforcement agencies and intelligence agencies has come full circle because of lack of information, lack of compliance to regulatory requirements. And that comes up with the first challenge. You have ever-changing landscape. The last speaker talked about that, and to keep on changing, especially with what the FATF keeps on coming up with every day, and fintech, fast-paced transactions. Even right now, we don't even have very mature fintech, neobank regulations. They keep on coming out with new ones, and because it's a very high-risk area, brought about by non-face-to-face transactions and anonymity around that. Now, if you are not able to put your finger on the button to be able to scan the horizon appropriately, that's your first problem. You're going to have to do proper compliance monitoring of the landscape to ensure that you have all the tools in place, either using RegTech or what you want to use to ensure that you are in the right place at the right time. Every time, constantly put your finger on that button. That's the first challenge. If not, you'll be waking up one morning, you realize that the rules and laws and regulations that you have been trying to comply with have changed. When we go for compliance examination, it will shock you even till today. And I'm sure you guys are all consulting. You see that when you go to your clients, some of them are still showing you 2018 laws and regulations in their laws and their policies and procedures. We have amended laws as early as recently as 2022, the MLPA 2022, the TPA 2022, the Proliferation Financing Act and all of that. But people are still capturing 2018. So that already is a problem. So that's one. Secondly, data privacy. Now, you're looking at fintechs who are ever evolving, very smart, agile, nimble. Last speaker spoke about that. And you're talking about cross-border transactions and clients that you're servicing across multiple jurisdictions. And you're not managing data. If GDPR does not even catch you and you find yourself foul of that, you have NDPR, which is also by regulation and law, Nigeria is supposed to also put things in place. That comes with another challenge. How do you manage client data to ensure that you don't fall foul of international and local regulations? That's a challenge, because apart from the fact that you're supposed to manage this data, two issues come up where you have bad actors taking this information, using it for cybercrime, using it to also perpetrate the crimes that we're trying to mitigate. Now, the cross-border issues are another challenge, because you're doing transactions across multiple jurisdictions. You want to bring in financing, foreign direct investments. You don't even know if these are the sources of these funds are actually from business email compromise. They're from frauds that have taken place in other jurisdictions, and you just want to bring in money. They give you documentation, you don't do your due diligence, you as a bank or financial institution, you process their certificate of capital importation for them with documentation that is false. You get legitimacy. That also becomes a challenge. And then another challenge that you also find that you're going to face is that you now do not engage the regulator very, very well because you feel the regulator is not your friend. And likewise, sadly, I've been on the other side. I know Yemi will tell you that I was always proactive to say that, look, because I worked in the banking sector, that look, regulators most times do not see the regulated as their partners. So you see, if that does not come together and there's collaboration, that also comes up as challenges, Joachim, and everybody on the call. So if we do not put ourselves together, it's not just about having a COBIN, which is the body that, all the CCOs of the banks, come together on a monthly basis and talk to the regulators. It is beyond that. Proper public-private partnership engagement and collaboration will help surmount those challenges. Right now, it's not there, Joachim, and that's also a challenge that leads to national security issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibrahim. I think so. You have really scared me with all these things you have really rolled out now, and this begs the question: how do we effectively monitor transaction? Right? How do you effectively monitor transaction? How do you ensure that all these transactions that come in, that you are processing on a day-to-day basis, does not fall foul of the law? You are not exposing yourself, the institution you work for, and even the nation to security threats. And I think I want to come to Yemi on this, but I also want Rosamond to chip in on this, on transaction monitoring. How effective, how easy can you imbibe transaction monitoring into your day-to-day financial services?
Okay, it's getting the basics right, really. We had mentioned false positives. All the previous speakers had mentioned false positives and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's at the foundation before we get to the transactions themselves, the products that you are dishing out to your clients, that you're offering your clients, the type of clientele that you have. If you've done your due diligence at the point of developing your products and at the time of onboarding, aligning both then becomes a bit easier because you would have then done your risk assessment. So it makes it easier when the transactions then occur, because before you can effectively monitor any transaction, your customer has a profile, and the kind of transactions they do subsequently, you would then match that with the profile you have on hand or on file, and then that determines whether that transaction is unusual for that client or is illegal and all that. So getting your data quality, that data quality is the foundation, is like the basic building block for transaction monitoring. If you don't have the right data, you have not properly segmented your customers, you may not have the right risk profile for them. And then when a transaction comes up, whatever algorithm you've built into your system will just be churning out things that are not useful. And then you waste time looking at what is not important. So that's so as I said, data quality is very, very critical. Two is the processes that you have. You will find out that, especially for older organizations, because attention to 10, 15 years systems way capture transactions. There's a trend that you need to, that's the system, whatever system you're using, it will build, there's a trend that it builds, and then it begins to say, is this a usual transaction for this class of clients? So getting all your processes to flow into the transaction monitoring engine is also, quite critical. The third one is fine-tuning your system. You have algorithms that have different scenarios, and that is used to build cases for analysts to then review. If you do not have, if you don't fine tune the system, for instance, in Nigeria, inflation is high. 10, 15 years ago, what you would do with 10,000 naira, you probably need maybe 150 or 200,000 to deal with that. So you have to fine tune your parameters at all times to make them align to current realities. So that's what would also reduce, false positives. Number 3 is, the third one is getting the business first line of defense, because when cases are built up and analysts have to review them, they are not the people who know the customer, who deal with the customer, who knows what is going on. You need to make reference to that first line of defense. And therein lies the challenge. But the people that deal with you, so you have some may exercise what we call willful blindness. You see some preferring explanations, adducing reasons that are just to ensure that, you don't file a suspicious transaction, you don't close their customer's account, you don't put a question mark, you don't freeze their customers' balances. So getting the staff, our colleagues in the first line of business to raise their level of risk awareness and to understand their responsibilities in responding to questions, requests from compliance analysts is quite important. And then for the analysts themselves, they also must understand products that the bank is offering, the organization is offering. If you don't have knowledge of how a particular product behaves, you then may say, oh, you may be crying wolf where there's none. So the knowledge, the technical knowledge of the compliance professional and the first line of defense is actually critical. Then the second one, I know Rosamond talked about systems. It is very, very important that we invest in the right kind of system. Availability of data. Now, I'm not talking about quality of data of customers. I am talking about the flow of data from the monitoring system. I'm sorry, from the banking system to the monitoring system.
Core banking
is also core banking system to the monitoring system is also critical, because you have many times transaction monitoring output from that is not available. It's slow because something had happened to the core banking system and they are not, reading each other. So those are the things, those are the challenges that you may have with transaction monitoring. Thank you.
I want Rosamond to quickly chip in on that. Rosamond, do you want to have this transaction monitoring? I know you're passionate more about this. Do you want to add to what Yemi has points she has given out?
Yes, apologies, my camera is off. I noticed that it's impacting my bandwidth, so I had to turn my camera off.
Okay.
So yes, what I'm going to mention is a lot of times you hear industry say or companies say transaction monitoring. But interestingly, having worked for over maybe say 5, 6, 7 companies in different sectors, including cybersecurity, one thing I've noticed is that when people talk about transaction monitoring, they're talking about reactive transaction monitoring rules. A number of times, those rules are not proactive. And at the end of the day, you ask yourself, what exactly are you checking against when an event has already occurred? I'm not saying those rules are not good, right? But it's very important that we also configure proactive rules. Benga mentioned about configuring of rules. You find out that I've been opportunity to interact with a lot of AML vendors, right? And they give you a list of rules that they can incorporate into your system. And they are looking at these rules here. As a digital bank, as a fintech, you look at these rules, find out that these rules cannot work for me. These rules can work in traditional bank, but when it comes to fintech, it can't work. Typical example, our users come on our platform through a device, isn't it? So the question is, how much of that, that's a very valid PII information you're supposed to use in configuring your rules. So the question you ask companies, how much are you using this device information as part of your TM rules? How much do you have any alerts that would, do you have any rules that would alert you when someone has made a change to their device? You have customers in different locations. Do we have geolocation red flags? Do you have rules that would alert you when the IP address has changed? Do you have rules that would alert you when someone has made a very valid PII change, after several failed login attempts? So what I'm saying in essence is that a lot of times we hear transaction monitoring rules. They are mostly reactive. Quick example, very, very quick example. This is a personal experience, right? I've used my bank, my card in HSBC card in a shop in UK, right? To top up my Oyster card. 10 minutes after that transaction, I get a call from my bank trying to confirm my location. Interestingly, my IP address was not pinging out of India. There's no how I could be in India in 10 minutes from London. I'll text my dom. So in essence, what I want to touch on is, whilst we talk of TM rules, as analysts, this copy and paste process of adopting TM rules does not work. Look at the TM rules, tailor it to your industry. US, not the same of say $1,000, you are likely going to get false positive because that's not a norm in the US, right? But then when you come to Nigeria, you tailor it to suit your behavioral pattern, your typologies you're seeing. Okay, so that is why for me, when it comes to TM, it's very important that when we're talking about transaction monitoring or fraud detection rules, let's also remember that we are talking about proactive rules. Whilst those reactive rules are there, to help us check history and all that, the proactive rules are the ones that actually help you stop events from even happening, and they have to be in real time. That's just what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Rosemont, for that interesting insight. So I want to come back to Ibrahim, because I know earlier you mentioned the need for there to be collaboration between the regulators and the players in the financial industry. Now, with all these points that are being raised, being proactive and not reactive, it means collaboration needs to be more enhanced. In your view, how do you think organizations can best collaborate effectively with the regulator to ensure that proactively most of the expectations that relates to AML compliance are at the top of the front of the burner for each organization?
Thank you, Joachim. So this question actually picks up from my last comment, which is even a challenge, which is on collaboration as well, because that also poses a challenge. Right now, to be honest with you, in country, we don't collaborate effectively. I talked about Akobin, and it's not just about banks. Have we integrated the fintechs, the neobanks properly into these collaborative frameworks? No, we haven't. The central bank, come up with policies and procedures, and sometimes they do that without even carrying along the regulated. They are reporting entities, as we call them, based on the MLPA, Money Prohibition Act. So the first way to do proper collaboration is the way we do it, even in development finance or even in participatory development circles. You don't just develop solutions without carrying people that you are trying to solve. You sit down with them, engage with them, and ensure that it is constant. Don't just come out and tell them, oh, let's have a engagement session where you already come up with all the solutions and the decisions. You sit with them and ask them, we have a problem, how do we solve this? So I said collaborative engagement. That's the first step. Everybody should be seen as equals, because what they don't understand is this. Thank God I've been on the other side, like I said. As a regulator, you just don't come up with rules, laws, and all of that without actually hearing from the people. The banks, the fintechs, the neobanks, they're all professionals. We're all professionals. We've been there for years. We know what the challenges and the problems are. So come bring us onto the table. Ask us, guys, how do you feel we can solve this problem? We are your regulator. In the UK, we have something called GMLIT, which is something that I'm hoping Nigeria will have. In Canada, they have similar options there. In the US, they have that as well. Public-private sector engagements to try and fight financial crime. So that's the first part. And it must be proactive, not reactive. Similar to the rules that Rosemont talked about. You don't do the same way. You should not be setting reactive TM rules. You should also not be setting reactive responses to problems in terms of collaboration. The other area also is that there must be an enabling environment for proper integration between traditional banks, which is part of the collaboration, and the fintechs, because whether we like it or not, these are the dinosaur colossal banks. All traffic for the fintechs, for the payment service providers, goes through the big banks. So what you find out when you're at the other side, when you're now regulating, you're doing financial crime investigation, which dovetails into national security issues, is that transactions that are now picked up by, say, maybe a big bank that have been done by, say, a fintech firm, all the data and the identifiers that are needed to actually put a picture to the puzzle are with the fintechs. But because they don't allow them to integrate properly, they don't trust their data and their systems, they feel that, no, we don't want you to come and give us your risk contingent liability. But it's not about that. Sit with them. It's not just, oh, sometimes it's so bad, Joachim, that even API, they don't want to give you API connectivity. And it's safe. Sit with them, have an agreement. How do we integrate so that I can get proper identifier information? It will shock you that after information has been given to the NFIU, they still have to go back again and ask for NIP information or go back to NIPS to try and find out who actually did this transaction. Transaction narrations are very, very vague. Collaboration effectively between fintech and traditional banks will help solve that problem. Another area that is going to be good for the collaboration is training framework that is both ways. It is not only the banks that need training or the fintech firms or the neobanks that need training, because we do a lot of training back in the NFIU. You know, they go out, they do compliance engagements. But remember that these are the operators. They know some of these things also more than the regulators. I know regulators also know their own. Let's come together. Let's train each other. We are the industry experts. Let's tell you what we know. We are the regulators. Let's tell you what we are seeing. Let's put our heads together and train each other to fight financial crime. And then lastly, there should be collaboration on policy development. Don't come up and say, we want to do sandbox. A central bank came up about 6-7 years ago, Yemi, if I remember correctly, to talk about sandbox, which is all over the world now, UK, UAE, China and all of that, Singapore. It's a very good environment for you to test your technology. But when they came up with that regulation, they did not give proper engagement with the banks to say, how do you want us to employ or deploy sandbox for everybody to use? In the UK, they made it very, very agile and said that, look, we want to do sandbox, but we want you to come and tell us, okay, how do you want this environment to work? But when it came out in Nigeria, they just came up and said, let's do sandbox. Dump your applications and test it. They made it very limited. They didn't allow other people to bring their suggestions. How do you develop policy if it's one-sided? Policy for the people should be policy for everybody with integration. So that's just my own 2 cents on this, Joachim.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ibrahim. And I want to come to Benga on this because this issue of technology integration and the benefit it portends. But the question there is, how do you balance innovation, right, with all these compliance requirements? As a fintech or a startup, how do you remain innovative while still having to contend with the huge demand, regulatory demand that has to do with compliance? So, but I just want to put it out there in case you have any question. We might be able to take a couple before we wrap up today. We're coming towards the end. Please put it in the chat and maybe we'll be able to see. Maybe we can take 1 or 2 before we wrap up for the day. So over to you, Benga.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is always a very critical point in the life of every fintech, in the life of all financial institutions. On the one hand, you want to be innovative, move quickly, you want to gain market share. On the other hand, you need to, of course, meet your compliance requirements. So how do you strike that balance? And this is always, like a catch-22 situation, both for the management team and for the compliance team as well, right? And, for me, I always look at it like this. I mean, I always say, as a compliance person, working especially maybe in a fintech as an example, the fintech is like a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. They're built to speed, to run, to move. That is what they are known for. However, no matter how fast a Ferrari is or a Lamborghini is, it also needs to have fantastic brakes, right? So the role of a compliance person is to complement the speed with the safety. So if Ferrari is racing, Formula One, you need to take bends. You need great brakes to be able to take those bends, navigate those bumps in the road, right? And that is our function. Our function is to guide the business, collaborate with the business. And there are different ways to do this, based on the experience one has gathered over the years. I think the first thing you probably need to think about is really how to bring these two together, the collaboration between the compliance function, which would then be a function of the quality of the persons you have in those roles, working alongside management. Now, for fintechs, what you find is, and what I'll try to do is just bring very practical examples, specifically to the fintech space. You have, startups who based on the small runway or budget they have, they can't go out and hire very senior compliance people, and understandably so, right? So one of the things you probably need to be doing first is, what can you leverage on? Is there a point trying to reinvent the wheel, build new solutions, trying to buy things that you can't really afford? Luckily, in today's world, there's lots of options. There are companies that provide all sorts of solutions. There's reg solutions, there's transaction monitoring, there's KYC tools, there's everything you need is out there. In addition to even the tools, there are the people you can leverage. There are individuals who consult, who can give you the support you need from the outside. So let's say you can't hire a very senior experienced person, but you can have an in-house team complemented by a team of consultants that have the experience, and more importantly, they have the contacts with the regulators that can help you to solve problems and guide you in the right way. So that is one. Two, collaboration with regulators. It's important you're able to build that as part of your DNA as a company, right? Because the regulator can, in one stroke of the pen, totally wipe out your business. So it is important, and Ibrahim kind of touched on it, that collaboration is critical. Not where it's ought to be, but we all as an industry need to come together to try and find ways to build this, to develop it, to make this better. Because it can only portend good for the industry if we're able to collaborate better with the regulator. The last thing I probably want to touch on in the interest of time is adoption of technology. Like I said earlier, there's lots of technology out there now. We're moving in the direction of AI, machine learning, predictive analysis. There's lots of good things out there. There are companies like YouVerify that have fantastic, interesting products out there. There's something we also call compliance as a service as well, that you can depend upon and begin to do what you need to do in terms of relying on services out there that can give you the bespoke service you need to run what you do properly. And the last thing I'll touch on is continuous improvement. It's not enough for you to build a compliance program and sit back and say, I'm done. You need to keep tweaking it, improving it, reviewing it to meet the demand of the day, the regulation of the day, and taking feedback both from the industry, from the regulator, from your customers as well, and keep on improving your program. Those are the ways I think you can continue to innovate and at the same time be on the right side of compliance.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's a wonderful insight there. I don't know, Akim, do we have any questions, or do we have anyone that has requested and wants to? Oh, okay, Solomon. I can see Solomon has raised his hand. Solomon, can you unmute?
Oh, good morning. Sorry, I wanted to just clap for the speaker. So I don't have a question. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I can see one from Adeyemi Toyo here, which says, are regulators able to regulate effectively, going by the fact that the regulators themselves are not up to date on current technological trends as far as financial services are concerned? For example, AML, CFT fraud, and forgeries filings are still submitted via Excel files. I don't know, Ibrahim, can you quickly take this?
Yeah, so I will, because it's actually a misnomer, and I'm proud to say that it's not what you think. I guess it's even actually a trick so that you think they're not advanced. The NFI is probably more advanced than any bank in this country. AI tools and everything. It's actually the other way around, Solomon. And the challenge is mostly with even the fintechs. My big sis Yemi will tell you, I think the FIU has overflogged over the years, rightfully so. The big banks, the conventional banks, they're already there. So the challenge with the fintech, the capital market operators, who are all report entities, are the ones sending these Excel reports, and each time the FIU keeps on sanctioning them. But because their technology does not even take this kind of filings, manual filings are not the goal. But obviously, we have what we call risk-based approach. You can't expect everybody to be on the same page. But with what the central bank is doing right now, they've even made it compulsory because these tools are there. They're cheap. Bengal's touched on them. You don't even need to have much financing to have basic XML conversions that will be able to comply and file a report to the FIU. They're actually there. Resources are spent. The challenge with the regulators, Solomon, is that there's constant change. People are being drained. The same way people in the services sector or private sector are leaving the country. Likewise, regulators are leaving the regulatory space to go back to fintech or go back to the banks. I did that. I switched both sides a couple of times. And at the same time, they're even leaving the country. brain drain. But believe me, they're very advanced, Solomon. And however, it's good to say that they're not all on the same page, but they're all getting there. But the central bank, the FIU, well advanced, AI tools, the best out there, everything that all the big financial institutions are using. Challenge now is that you have a lot of change, like I said, which is a problem. We don't have consistency. Recently, central bank fired a lot of people. You'll be shocked to know that that actually impacted supervision in this country. And we have to stop being reactive and being proactive and keep our best hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibrahim. So I think we have just about 2 more minutes before we start wrapping up. I don't know, Rosemont, can you address a question from Temitope Lawal on regulatory fine and why banks are being fined heavily by regulator when the focus should be on catching the criminals?
Thanks for that question. But again, who is responsible? I mean, we have obligation on us, regulatory obligation on us, to ensure that we comply with every regulation, including AML compliance, right? So if we apply to the CBN or to SEC or to relevant regulatory bodies that we want a license to provide financial services, then the onus is on us to ensure that that platform is secured, right? That's an obligation that you can't decide you want a license and at the end of the day you want to run away from the obligation, because at the end of the day it's not just about the criminals out there, it's also about the security and the security of your customers, right? So I do not agree, right, that you should go for the criminals and do not sanction the companies, because if you do that, the danger in that is that companies are just going to do whatever they want. They're not going to comply. They're just going to, operate without any checks in place. So for me, it's very important that we should hold these companies accountable. If you're going to apply for a license, then you should adopt whatever measures you need to put in place to ensure that your platform is secured. And another thing I was going to say is why I raised my hand was regarding what Ibrahim said. A lot of times, fintechs don't even know that, for example, CBN has provided the regulatory sandbox that you can apply to come and show your innovations. A lot of fintechs don't even know that this thing exists, that they can actually apply to go to the regulator and show them this is what we want to build, this is how we're supposed to work, to help them understand and then build the appropriate framework surrounding what you want to build. So it's really very important that we are aware that there's such a provision available and that we can leverage on that.
Thank you very much, Rosemont. So we have just 4 minutes before the end of this webinar. I know I can see some hands raised up, but I don't know, maybe Kim, you might be able to take opportunities out to take some of these questions and maybe address them after the webinar. But I will hand over to Akim now for additional information from YouVerify. It's been wonderful having you all on this. I want to send my special appreciation to all the speakers. I think they have done a wonderful justice to the topics we have put up for discussion. So over to you, Akim.
Thank you so much, Mr. Joy. Thank you to all of our incredible speakers. I've learned so much on this call. And we will do our best to treat the rest of the questions if we still, if we can still get some time after this. We love that everyone is asking very practical questions. I don't know how important this is for you. But right about now, I would like to invite to take the stage the product lead at YouVerify, Mr. Nathaniel Odofin, to quickly introduce us to 1 or 2 things in about 3 to 4 minutes, and then we'll go back to taking questions. Nathaniel?
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I able to share my screen, Akim? I see that the share button seems to be disabled.
All right, give me a moment.
All right.
Let me give you access. Okay, you can share your screen now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I can do that now. Just give me a moment. So please confirm if you can see my screen. All right, great. So I just want to do a quick walkthrough on the U-Verify transaction monitoring platform to see how we also address transaction monitoring, and a lot of interesting issues have been raised during the session, and we're going to look at how we also address some of those issues with our transaction monitoring. I mean, for every platform, the first thing is to be able to onboard your clients on the platform, and so we have uh, 3 different ways you can onboard your clients on the platform for to monitor the transactions. You can either onboard them through CSV or APIs. You integrate with your legacy applications, that's your core banking applications via API. And so you can, once you have your clients on the platform, so while we are doing client onboarding, one of the very first things we do, just like one of the speakers mentioned, it all starts from the core. It starts from the beginning. It starts from how you are able to carry out risk intelligence, how you are able to carry out continuous due diligence, how you're able to profile the clients, right? Your before you even start any form of transactions with them. And so what we do is, while we are onboarding your clients, we carry out basic KYC. In the case of an individual client, we carry out also KYB in the case of a business client, and then we also do a whole lot of risk intelligence that we carry out. After we do all of that, we are able to rate the client either as high or medium or low. And then let me go into the client overview so you can see. Here, this particular client has been rated as 75 as its risk score. And then we can also see all the basic information about this client. We can see the recent transactions he has made in the last 7 days. We can see an AI report, and then we also have this AI assistance that helps you to give explainability on how we reached this particular score for this client. What are the things that are involved? You see that right here. And also we see the transactions, the media sentiments. We run adverse media to see if there are negative news about this person or the business as a whole. And if there are alerts that have been triggered right now, this is very clean. So we see all the alerts that have been triggered against the client, and if there are cases. This platform also has a full case management feature, where in case you want to escalate or you want to investigate further an alert that we can go ahead and do that and manage that process right from there. The alerts page also shows you all the alerts that have been triggered on the platform. You can choose to discard the alerts. You can choose to escalate, like I mentioned, the alert. And you can also want to see more information about the alert that's been triggered. You click on the alert. You can see also the AI summary also gives you explainability on how we reach the score, or why this alert is critical or not. Before I continue, Akim, how many minutes do I have for this, so I can wrap up on time?
You have 5 minutes.
All right, great. Thank you for that. Okay. All right, so and I just click on the AI explainability here. It gives you more information about this alert, the IP address, the critical level, the weighted score, the breakdown of the score, and all of that. You see all the information. You can discard this alert, and you can also create a case right from this alert and say, okay, I want to investigate this alert more further. Are there syndicates? Are there other transactions that are related to this alert? You can go ahead and create a case for this alert and then monitor that. So I'll just go straight to the case because of time, so you can have a quick view of the case management. And so this is a case that has been started. It has been opened. I just click on that so you see how it looks. Now, for the case management, you can add more information, add evidences in terms of more transactions, more alerts that are related in case they syndicate. You see all of them right here on the platform. You can add documents, right, in case there's a document you need to add, because all of this information, we have an NFIU presence in this meeting, and so all of this information are also needed by the time you are submitting this suspicious transaction or suspicious activity to NFIU. So you can add all of those evidences, and you have also an auto-generated case analysis that you can print out, export, and you can also add into your reports. Then also, I will show us the models, creation of models. We talked about rules earlier on. We talked about being proactive with our rules and that. So in addition to just like every other regulator, reg tech providers do, we also provide a list of a comprehensive list of rules that can be helpful. But in addition to just providing rules and models for you, we also allow you to be able to create your own models, right? And so you can create a new model by yourself that will suit what you want and activate it. I can click on, let me just say, velocity, for example. And then what's the scenario? Is it used in a retail bank? Is it an AML compliance? Is it a business banking? You can choose whatever scenario you feel this particular model you're creating fits into. You can click, you can select multiple as you want. It can be this, right? And then what compliance? Is it structuring? Is it shell company layering, crypto? Is it unusual account activity or behavior? You select as you wish and then give the description. So, and then you go next. You have your model velocity, right? Framework created. Now you can go ahead and create the rule itself. So we can create real-time rules, right? These real-time rules are the rules that that helps you to, it depends on how you want to the rule action to happen. So it means once a rule has triggered a transaction, you can choose to say, okay, for this alert that's been triggered, I want that transaction to be placed on hold. You click a reject. I want that transaction to be reviewed. You click on the review. All right. So if you have a reject, if it's a real-time rule, what happens is that transaction is going to be placed on hold, just like the example that was given earlier on. The transaction is going to be placed on hold until someone investigates, goes through the alert and case management process I showed us earlier on. And then if they are comfortable that, okay, this is something we need to report to NFIU, they can go ahead and even start the process of reporting from this platform. So I know NFIU web reporting is very huge, and a lot of information needs to be passed across on that platform. So you can start all of that from here. So I'm going to close this so that I can wrap up on time. Go to reporting. And so the process of reporting starts from here. And all the information that you have on the platform already in terms of the transactions involved, the location, the amount involved, the parties that are involved, multi-parties that are involved, all of those information you can easily pull from this platform. And then when you're done with this, you can then go ahead and download an XML. Now that XML is what is being sent to NFIU, or that you can finish up your reporting from there. So that's basically the platform. There are so many other things there we cannot show at the moment, but of course you can find some time after now, reach out to us, and we can provide you with a detailed demo of the transaction monitoring platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nathaniel. Thank you for the very straight to the point demo. If anyone have questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat box, and we'll be very happy to address them. Meanwhile, we had a couple of people with questions earlier that we couldn't take. I think now might be a good time to quickly take some of those questions so we can quickly round up and everyone can go back to today's business. Mr. Onche Abraham, your hands are still raised.
Thanks so much for this opportunity. Highly impressed, though I joined lately to some official engagement, but I'm glad that I'm part of it. Quickly to the point, I've been trying to render reports. I don't know how effective these applications and the software will be effective for us as regards integrating with our own core banking application in order to enhance our reporting on the Go AML portal. We have been having a lot of challenges rendering reports. We'll render it to become invalid, and we'll try to see how we can integrate it, but all to no avail. So I wouldn't know if we'll be able to lend a helping hand in this aspect for us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. So one of the things we do with our reporting is that NFIU has a validator to ensure that whatever you are sending to them is correct. All the fields are validated before you send them. So one of the things that we have done on our reporting is that by the time you start uploading, filling your form from our platform, we also, using the schema of the validator of NFIU, we can also help you validate your report first from our platform, so that as long as the validation is successful from here, you can now export the XML and go to NFIU and upload your XML and complete the process from there. And one other thing we are looking at to do going forward is also seeing how we can also integrate, working on integrating directly with NFIU in terms of the API. That's the conversation that's still on the table, but we'll soon wrap that up. But right now, the easiest way we can start the process from our platform, download the XML which has been generated, go to NFIU page, and then upload your XML. I don't know if is it Ibrahim? There's an NFIU speaker on the call. If you can add some more information on that.
So Nathaniel, just a caveat out there, even though I'm still very much part and parcel of the FIU, I'm no longer there. But okay. I still engage with them. I'm a pioneer staff, spent a large amount of years there, and I was head of compliance. So everything you're speaking about, the schema, everything, I was involved in developing that. But having said that, I can speak, but it can't be an official response because I'm not longer there. So I even put in the chat box there a response to one of the speakers on that. It's safer to take two approaches. You can tell them, you've told them that already. So YouVerify and so many other tech firms out there already have developed their platform to allow you, he already mentioned that, Nathaniel mentioned that, Onche, to help you do the filing. Now, the challenge you are facing, and every speaker talked about that today, is your data. I have to be honest with you. So if you're not able to validate, they cannot produce your data for you. Issues with validation on the NFIU schema, what you give YouVerify or whatever application you have out there will not validate if the information is not there. So most times what happens is that if you have a vendor that is trying to cut corners because they want to deliver for you, they will just fill that place with null data. And even that now, NFIU has developed their tech to a level that it will now know that it's this data you just filled in, which is gibberish. It will not validate. But at the same time, they can help you with that. I'm not going to, on this platform, mention anything for the NFIU, but they're very available, they're very open. Either you use your vendor, YouVerify can help with that, I'm sure of that, to help you clean up your data, structure data. Rosamond talked about that, Yemi spoke about that, even Benga spoke about that. Data structuring is the problem. If it's not structured appropriately, you will never validate. And they can help you with that. And if you need their help to help you structure it, get the right data that will validate in the fields, they can help you with that. Also, the FIU is also open on a case-by-case basis. You approach the relevant department in the NFIU. I can see you're an MFB, and you guys are very important. Go to the NFIU and have a one-on-one with the IT department. They can also help with that. I'm 100% sure of that. As head of compliance, we did help a lot of report entities with their reporting issues. But I also believe YouVerify can help with that. Thank you.